Hello students, and welcome to the CompTIA A+ 1202 exam course brought to you by Third Level Technology. I am your instructor, Jim Herby. In this episode, we're going to discuss section 1.4 of the objectives. Our topic is Microsoft Windows Tools. Let's begin. We're going to begin our discussion with Task Manager. Task Manager is the utility we have in Microsoft Windows to allow us to perform real-time monitoring of our system and applications. We can access Task Manager with the keyboard shortcut of Control, Shift, and Escape. Task Manager is the utility that allows us to monitor our CPU, RAM memory, disk storage, and network usage. Within Task Manager, there are 5 different tabs, and you want to understand the basic function of each one. The first Task Manager tab is Services. The Services tab is where we can view all of the running processes and system services on our device and the network. Within the Services tab, we can start, stop, and restart any network services. Each individual service will have a status bar. The status bar will display whether or not the service is running, stopped, or has an error. The second tab is Startup. The Task Manager Startup tab will list all of the applications that will launch during system booting. This will allow us to pinpoint everything that launches during our startup, and if we have any kinds of issues, we can enable or disable certain types of programs. The third tab is Performance. Task Manager Performance will give us graphical displays about the usage of different components of our network. We can review the CPU usage, the amount of RAM memory that is in use, our available disk storage. We can also view network usage. This will be how much bandwidth are we consuming. This is going to be real-time data. It's very important, especially as an A+ technician, when you are troubleshooting. The Performance tab can give you a clear time frame for when we may have a spike in a certain type of activity. Within the Performance tab, we also can view our CPUs based on individual core usage, as well as those on multi-core CPU. The fourth Task Manager tab is Processes. The Processes tab will list all of the running applications and all of the background processes. We sometimes also call these dependencies. We can show all of the resource usage for each of our metrics, and then we can sort them based off of resource usage. So we can rank or prioritize certain types of applications that may be consuming a large amount of bandwidth, storage, or RAM memory. And from there, we can troubleshoot whether or not we want to allow the application to remain on our network. And the fifth tab is the Users tab. Task Manager Users will display all of the logged in individuals on our network. We can also view all of the CPU, RAM, and disk storage that's being consumed by each user as well. In the Users tab, if we have administrative privileges, we also have the ability to log individual users off or disconnect them from the network if we have some issue with them specifically. So we've discussed Task Manager and the 5 different tabs you want to understand. And now in the remainder of this episode, we're going to discuss some individual tools and features of Windows 10 and 11. Access them through the command line. You can do so with the corresponding command that is listed in each topic in the exam objectives. So if you want to do any command line supplements, I would refer you there for the different commands for each topic. Our first feature is Event Viewer. Event Viewer is a tab that we can use to display all of the data about our system and application logs. This is where we can view when certain types of applications have been opened, who has accessed them, as well as the usage of specific types of resources. We also can use Event Viewer to help with our troubleshooting. Because we have access to all of our log data, we can pinpoint specific dates and times when we may have had the beginning of a system problem. Our next tool is disk management. Disk management is the utility we use with disk partitioning. Partitioning is when we take our storage drive and we divide it into defined segments called partitions. And within each partition, we can store data relative to specific tasks. For example, one disk partition will contain all of your BIOS and your operating system kernel files. Another partition may contain all of your organization's secure and private data, such as encrypted keys and secure passwords. Within disk management, we can format and resize our disk partitions. We also can create or delete partitions as well. The utility also allows us name each partition with a drive letter and a network path. Our next utility is Task Scheduler. Task Scheduler is the utility we use to automate certain types of performance tasks on the network. We can use Task Scheduler to do things such as updating our antivirus and anti-malware software. We also can use Task Scheduler to send out automated emails or to display pop-up messages on our network devices. We can use Task Scheduler either by date and time or also by certain types of triggers. So for example, if we have our network bandwidth being consumed in a large amount, we could use Task Scheduler to issue our users a reminder to perform certain tasks in off hours. Next, we have Device Manager. Device Manager is the utility that will list all of the hardware devices that are installed on the system. We can use Device Manager to update, install, or disable all of our device drivers. Device Manager will also show the network status of all of our devices, such as routers, switches, firewalls, and servers. And we can use it to gather any type of data we need for troubleshooting. Our next utility is Certificate Manager. Certificate Manager is the tool we use to manage all of our user and devices' digital certificates. Digital certificates are the way that we can authenticate our users and devices on the network. We must have valid digital certificates. This will be for things like our email, our network's domain, and many other ways that we need to authenticate ourselves to third parties. With Certificate Manager, we can import, export, or delete certificates as needed for each device and user. Our next tool is Local Users and Groups. This is the tool we use to manage the user accounts directly on the user's local device. This will be all of the accounts. These are not your network accounts, but rather the username and password that you need to access the local device. So if your computer is not connected to the internet at all, the local user and group settings will be the only ones you have configured. Within the local user and group tabs, we can create, delete, or modify user accounts. And if we are on a connected work group or a subdomain, we also can manage the local devices as well. In this tab, we also can set passwords and configure user rights for the resources that are on our local subnet. Our next utility is Performance Monitor. Performance Monitor is the utility that gives us both historical and real-time performance data of our network devices. We can use Performance Monitor for our network switches and routers, as well as our firewalls and servers. Performance Monitor will allow us to see if we have any downtime with our network devices. We also can get data on any types of restarts or reboots that needed to be performed. We also can create custom data sets. This is where we can gather data for only specific types of events. So if we wanted to gather a data set on the historical reboots for our network devices, we could create that type of customized monitoring within the Performance Monitor feature. Next, we have Group Policy Editor. Group Policy Editor is where we can configure all of the group policies for our user devices and user accounts. Group Policy Editor is available in all of your Windows Pro Workstation, and Enterprise editions. When you are using Group Policy Editor, any changes that you make will be automatically integrated into your Active Directory. This is a very effective tool when we are changing the configurations for our different groups. From the editor, we also can add or remove individual members from a group, or add and remove devices as well. Next, we have System Information. System Information, you also see this called MS Info 32. This is a utility that you see in Windows 10 only. System Information will be utility we can use for our 32-bit applications and operating systems. It will allow us to record data for all of our system components, software, and hardware that are running in a 32-bit environment. Next, we have Resource Monitor. Resource Monitor is a utility that allows us to gather info on all of our component usage. The four main resource types are CPU, RAM memory, disk storage, and network bandwidth. And in Resource Monitor, we can look at all of these four individual resources. Take a look at the amount of usage over a defined period of time. We can do real-time data gathering, or we can do a historical or an archival view of how a resource was performing in the past. Next, we have System Configuration. System Configuration is the utility that allows us to manage all of our boot and startup configurations. In System Config, we can enable or disable certain programs that we want to launch when our system is booting up. We can use the Boot tab to manage our boot order. This is going to be the order that we go through to find our operating system files for launching and powering on our computer. System Config also has diagnostic options, built-in utilities on the device that can try to identify any issues that may arise during the startup process. Next, we have Disk Cleanup and Disk Defragment, and these two are normally integrated with each other. Disk Cleanup is the utility that allows us to remove files from our disk storage. We can delete any temporary files, we can clear our system cache, as well as empty our recycle bin. Disk Cleanup is something that can be automatically scheduled, so we can use scripts to allow our system to run disk cleanup periodically on a normal schedule. Related is Disk Defragment. Disk Defragment is the utility we use to reorganize data on our hard drives. We can take data that is related to each other and allow it to be fragmented and then reorganized in a closer location on the storage. This helps to improve our read and write times, especially on our hard disk drives where we are using a mechanical drive. We don't need to use defragmenting on our solid state drives because they are using cellular technology. And lastly, we have Registry Editor. The Registry Editor is the utility that allows us to view and edit the entire Windows registry. We can store all of our OS and application configurations here. Our Registry Editor also allows us to store, import, and export all of the registry and encryption keys for our users. This allows us to maintain a backup that is separate from our network storage as well. That will conclude our discussion of Section 1.4 Microsoft Windows Tools. In our next episode, we will move on to Section 1.5 in the objectives and discuss Microsoft Command Line. We thank you again for following along in the episodes in the course and wish you best of luck in your studies. Enjoy the rest of your day.